This is not a spelling mistake. Thank you, Christy, for finding a good accompanying picture. When I grew up in communist Russia, we had no idea what Hell-oween is. Had even never heard of this holiday, you know. Probably at some point there was some kind of heavy metal group which we've heard of out there, was called Hell-oween, whatever. Had no idea what it was. Anyway, back when I was in my teenage years, I was going to different school kids' summer camps. I don't know what do kids do today and what you guys did when you were in your teenage years at the camps like this, but before we would, as a kids, fall asleep, we loved to tell different spooky stories, one of which I still remember. So it was like one lady had worked at the bread bakery and had a very early start of her shift, somewhere like 3 o'clock a.m., and so she would walk to her job from her house, and to make a shortcut, she would go through the cemetery, just by the path. And she'd been doing it for years and years and got used to it. So one day, she noticed that a gentleman just walks behind her the same path, and she just turned to him and casually asked, "Oh, hello, I see you here for the first time. Aren't you scared walking at night through the cemetery like this?" And he said, "Well, when I was alive, I was scared, but now it seems to be all right." Well, this is one of the probably mostly reasonably nicest of the spooky stories. But have you ever thought of a question whether or not there are some kind of Hell-oween-style stories in the Gospels? I'll show you a couple. At least I have 3 cases of a really, really spooky and dangerous stories. Case number 1, Capernaum. If you drive as a tourist into this point on a map, you will see a sign, Capernaum, the town of Jesus, which is true. That was really his town where he was well accepted. Peter was born in Capernaum. But do you know what happened the very first time Jesus ended up in Capernaum. By the way, he ended up in Capernaum after his own relatives in Nazareth almost threw him down the cliff, right? So he comes in to a wonderful synagogue whose remains you can still see in the town of Jesus Capernaum Archaeological Museum. And there he discovers, he starts teaching, as the Gospel of Mark tells us, but then he discovered a man with an unclean spirit. And he cried out, saying, this man, "Let us alone. What have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy you? Who are you?" "The Holy One of God." Do you notice who is speaking that? It's a demon speaking from inside that man. Where? In the synagogue. Unbelievable. James, commenting later on a case like this, says, "Do you believe that there is one God?" Even the demons believe and tremble. That demon inside the man from the synagogue was trembling. But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet and come out of him." And when the unclean spirit had convulsed him and cried out with a loud voice, he came out of him, and they were all amazed. I am pretty sure that the time between this demon coming out of a man who was literally laying on the floor in seizures, that time was much longer than the time we read several sentences of the gospel story. Have you ever been present when a person, someone whom you know, is having a serious, let's say, epileptic seizures? It is scary because you don't know how to help this person. You don't know what's going to happen. You run, you call the ambulance. You know, if you're not experienced in first aid or health professional, you would be scared even of that. And trust me, the people who are diagnosed with epilepsy are not the same as a demon-possessed. This is not the same thing. Let us not confuse this. Today, unfortunately, many Christians and in many churches, they can actually do more harm to people like this. They take people diagnosed with epilepsy, people diagnosed with schizophrenia. They are concluding and telling that these are demons, we're going to cast out the demon. I know a few stories when a person diagnosed with schizophrenia was a subject of this prayer of casting demons, which is kind of customary in some churches, because some of these pastors, they claim that God gave them the gift of casting out demons, and they want to exercise this gift, praising themselves probably more than doing good to this person. And I know that if you subject a person diagnosed with schizophrenia to this kind of prayer, you're going to get this person sometimes permanently psychotic, because dealing with demons is a much more serious business than just, playing games of emotions from the pulpit. And this is what Jesus had to encounter. The very first time he walks in the Capernaum, in the synagogue. And what is the synagogue? The synagogue is a gathering place where the Torah and the prophets are read and studied. And he encounters this person possessed by the demons, and he has to deal with this person. Probably the most well-known case, described in all three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and probably well-known to many people, the case of Gadara. As you can see on a map, it's right across Capernaum, but it's in the area which is a border between Israel and Syria at that time. So this is the area also known as Decapolis. And so there in Gadara, when they arrived there, just crossing the Lake Kinneret, that's how they call it in Israel today, Lake Kinneret, or Christians know it as a Sea of Galilee. When they crossed the boat, they ended up in the area where there were some tombs like this. And these type of tombs in the rock, that's where people were buried. They, in that area, you can't really dig a grave like we're used to. And if you think of a really, really, really scary story, just think of this demoniac whom Jesus encountered in this shore, in the southern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Poor man, possessed by the devil, was living in these caves together, sharing his living space with the bones of the dead. What kind of more Hell-oween do you want? It wasn't a joke for him. This man was suffering, greatly suffering, and he was suffering from two major problems. Probably his biggest suffering was from being isolated, because everybody else is scared of him. He was constantly in psychotic state. That's what we would characterize him scientifically. And the ability to be, like physical ability to throw stones and, rip the chains and stuff like this. Probably today, you can, if you see someone acting like this, that's, you got to get lots of drugs into this individual system. And somebody on drugs can have this hyper muscular reaction. I can imagine after this hyperness ends, because the physical resources of our body are not infinite, what kind of pain this man was. Just think in a normal state of mind, lifting something heavy, right? And you're not trained for this, just something unusually heavy. You're going to have, maybe chiropractor is not going to be able to help you, right? Something like this extraordinary, beyond your normal body physical capacity, is just gonna then be so painful. And they didn't have ibuprofen or any something stronger. Boy, it's terrible. He was hurting. That's the second thing. He was hurting physically. And of course, we discovered that this poor man had a legion of demons. It's hard to physically imagine. We can describe the physical state of this person, but what was happening in the spiritual realm, inside him, it's beyond our mental capacity to picture. And boy, what happens next is, again, this man runs to Jesus and he worships him. And again, the demons are speaking inside of him. And that's when we learn that Jesus, Jesus demonstrate that they have a legion of demons. I don't know what the Roman legion is, about 7,000 soldiers, but like this. It's like a World War II army division. I don't know what it really felt or how it works, but Jesus takes control of this legion of demons, and look what they're saying to him. Look what they're saying to him. They're saying not to send them out of the country. Wait a second. Which country? The Galilee. Why did these demons want to stay in Galilee? What was nice for them in Galilee? Well, let's keep this question in mind, because I'm going to answer it after I read to you the third case, and we will learn a little more details about what Jesus had to do, what Jesus had to deal with during his ministry time in Galilee. But there is one observation which I want you to take in right now and pay attention. When you read the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Mark, and the Gospel of Luke, you will discover that these three Gospels have a certain structure to them, a certain pattern. The first part of the Gospels, when we, past the first, story of the John the Baptist, or the birth of Jesus, but as soon as we begin to talk about the life of Jesus, it will be described in two sections. Section number one will be Jesus' life and ministry in Galilee, and section number two is going to be his entrance to Jerusalem and what was in Jerusalem, until the week of his death and resurrection. This is Galilee, Jerusalem. And what you're going to discover when you read through the Gospels and be observant what you're reading through, you will discover that Jesus did all kinds of miracles. Well, he healed people, healed blind people, healed the deaf people, healed all different sicknesses. And he did it everywhere, both in Galilee and in Jerusalem. But when it comes to casting out demons, and through three Gospels, we have five cases of casting out demons, and I'm giving you three. But they're all in Galilee. That's a good question. Why? Which we will try to answer. But I want you to pay attention to this fact that this is all happening specifically in Galilee. And the demons don't want to leave that country. Why? Well, let's take another fact about Jesus' story of casting out demons before we answer all these questions. And so, case number 3, it's Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor. It's also Galilee, just a little bit off. And Mark chapter 9 describes what happened after Jesus. Peter, John, and James come down after transfiguration of Jesus. Jesus appeared to 3 of these disciples or apostles in his fullest glory. And they come down and they have to deal with another demon-possessed individual. And here is what his father describes. He has seizures, so he's fallen down. It's kind of a very difficult condition. He has foams coming out of his mouth. He gnashes his teeth, and apparently the seizures make his muscles cramp, throughout the entire body. This is terrible, I'll tell you. I know what a night muscle cramps are. It's painful. But the whole body cramp, I feel for this man. And so Jesus observed how this unclean spirit convulses this man. And so he asked the father a specific question, and he says, how long has it been happening? And the answer is, in the English it says from the childhood, but in the original it says from youth. So he started having it as he was a young man. So why all these encounters happen in Galilee? You see this map, Jesus preached in Judea, Samaria, and Galilee. Well, including Decapolis, and it's around the Sea of Galilee. Why? And the answer to this, because what Jesus did in Galilee is a fulfillment of one of the most important biblical prophecies. This prophecy is recited during the carols and choruses and choirs on Christmas time. But I strongly believe that this prophecy today needs to be recited around the days of Hell-oween. Not Halloween. There is nothing hollow in this. Actually, the origin of this tradition comes all the way from ancient Romans. And Romans had this specific day. They called it the Parantelia. They were honoring the spirits of deceased parents and ancestors. And I'm not sure how Romans did it, but I don't have to explain to some of you guys. You probably may have seen in your home countries, but my friend who goes regularly to be a missionary in Madagascar, he showed me some very disturbing pictures of how the local people in the Madagascar, in the heartland of Madagascar, which is one of the poorest country in the world, honor the deceased ancestors. They literally, first of all, they hallucinate themselves with the mushrooms, so they're all high, and then being in a state of high, they go and dig the graves of their loved ones, pull out the skull of their grandparents and whatever body bones, and they take them, they dance with them, and they take them to their homes. And this is very ancient tradition. It's not coming from Africa. It was coming all the way from Mesopotamia, i.e. Babylon, because archaeologists discovered the ancient Babylonian houses second millennium BC, so 2,000 years before Christ. And, they discovered that this is the house, and right under the foundation of the house where the bedroom was, there are bones buried. And then they found these incantation texts, which basically people recited to communicate with spirits of their deceased ancestors. And this is the lifestyle. This is the key lifestyle of the pagan societies across the world. And we know why, because they come from the same source, the devil. And this is what Jesus did all his earthly ministry. During his first coming, he didn't come to make a better world or new earth. During his first coming, he came for a special mission. Because remember one thing, he didn't just come and immediately died on a cross. He came and he ministered. Some people ask me, why 3 years? Well, that's what was needed for him to accomplish, besides his death on a cross, to accomplish his two tasks: to teach, raise his disciples, number one, and number two, to defeat the devil. And right after his baptism, before even forming the circle of his disciples and choosing his apostles, he went into the desert to encounter the devil. And then he went to Galilee from the desert and immediately encountered the devil. Because this is what Isaiah prophesied about him. It says here, and when at first he lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan and the Galilee of Gentiles. I specifically brought this map to show you the ancient Israel tribes, how their tribal land was, because Isaiah was writing during that period where these tribes still existed in the northern kingdom. And look at this. The violet color, it's kind of smaller, that's the land of Zebulun. That's around the Galilee. Then you have Naphtali, the bigger one, which is kind of a mustard color, not the same as Manasseh. You see Manasseh, you see Naphtali. And then you see here other tribes. But you see, that's exactly the area, Zebulun and Naphtali. That's exactly the area where Jesus was ministering. And that was the area which was, at time of Isaiah, first hit by Assyrian invasion. An Assyrian king took all these tribes, Manasseh, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali. He took them all the way to Assyrian captivity, and they never returned. So that's why it says the Zebulun, the Naphtali, he heavily oppressed, because these people were worshiping idols. Verse 2, the people who walked in darkness have seen the great light. Those who dwelt in the land of shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. This is the prophecy. What is this shadow of death? What's this all about? What are they talking about? This land of the shadow of death. Well, we need to look at this passage in context, because Isaiah chapter 8 talks about this, and Isaiah chapter 9 continues. And in Isaiah chapter 8, it nails it. What was the reason why these people up north during the time of Isaiah were so oppressed. It says, when they say to you, seek those who are mediums and wizards who whisper and mutter, should not a people seek their God? Should they seek the dead on behalf of living? To the law and to the testimony, if they do not speak according to this word, it's because there is no light in them. To the law and to the testimony. Let's read the law. The law is very clear. The book of Deuteronomy says, there shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or the one who interprets omens, or sorcerer. Yeah, today, the most popular children book, Harry Potter. It's exactly about this. I mean, it's a struggle. I fully identify with the parents who have to struggle because of the children who have curiosity, They go even to the preschool, and they already get all these demonic fairy tales, and it attracts their imagination. I don't know which of the movies today is without this stuff. You see what kind of world is this? It's natural for children to be wanting to listen to fairy tale. A fairy tale is demonic stuff, most popular. But the Bible is very specific. The one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or the one who calls up the dead. For all who do these things are an abomination to the Lord. This is what the law says. This is what the law says. And a testimony of the prophet Isaiah says, what will happen if people don't obey the law? Isaiah 8:21. It says, they will pass through it hard-pressed and hungry, and it shall happen when they're hungry, they will be enraged, and curse their king and their God, and look upward. And they will look to the earth and see trouble and darkness, gloom and anguish, and they will be driven into darkness. This is the consequences of engaging or being attracted, or in any shape or form driven to this worship, the dead, these special powers, these conjuring spirits, and all kinds of stuff. And this is what it was in Galilee. This is what these northern tribes who were taken captive, they got engaged, because it's the integral part of idol worship. And we're talking today, idol worship, idol worship, idol worship. What is it? It's an integral part of idol worship. These kind of practices, and the Torah says it's an abomination before the Lord, and the consequences, people will be immersed in total darkness. But this is the great hope that Isaiah projects. It says, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death upon them the light has shined. How was it fulfilled by Jesus? And why the demon-possessed at Jesus' time were present, particularly in Galilee? Well, we need to study a little bit of archaeology of Galilee, because the book of Isaiah does mention the Galilee of Gentiles. It's like, why the Galilee is called of Gentiles? Well, just take a look at some map and pictures. So, the Galilee, after Jews returned from Babylonian captivity, was populated by all kinds of pagan people. And Jews who didn't have any more space, living space in Judea, settled in Galilee and established, Galilee was not an ancestral land for the tribe of Judah. And the only tribe of Judah survived, returned from Babylonian captivity. But they were, the Galilee was just a mix and a mishmash of different people. And Jews were settling there since 4th century BC. And so what you see when you travel throughout Galilee, if I have a chance to take tourists, I would show you many, many synagogues. So, synagogue in Chorazin, synagogue in the town of Magdala, from whom famous Mary the Magdalene is. And if you are carefully reading her biography, she was demon-possessed because Jesus cast out 7 demons from her. That's what she is known particularly. And she lived in this village of Magdala. That's another synagogue around the place where Jesus cast out these legion of demons into the pigs. And so, but besides this, you're going to see this. And you're going to ask, oh, what a nice landscape is. Yeah, the landscape is really, really nice because it is, the headwaters of one of the rivers that form Jordan River. But this cave is very specific. It is a shrine of Greek god Pan. And if you heard the Greek mythology, Pan is a god of wine and the parties. You see, where you have wine and the parties, you have sex. And you see, you live in Jewish village, you go to the synagogue and you're a teenager and you want some fun and you hear the music and voices, jubilant voices. So some of your friends kind of, shh, come on. While my parents are studying the Torah, let us come and check that village out. It's only 3 miles. Let's just run. So they run. And what they get themselves into, they see naked women. And they're so welcoming. Come in, have a fun. Oh, such a fun in the Jewish village you can't have. First, the party, drinking, then the sex, and then some kind of aroma or something else. You see, come in. So they had a full package, from drinking and sex to witchcraft. And they take it home. And the boy comes in. And the father looks at him. And the foam comes out of his mouth. And the voices are screaming across the village. And he takes him to the synagogue, and he falls into convulsion, disrupting the divine service Isn't it terrible? This is what happens. This is how we get possessed by demons. It is not because somebody have been diagnosed with schizophrenia. But how do you find someone who is demon possessed today? Exactly. I can tell story after story about this, don't have time, but it's exactly when people like this got involved into some kind of spiritistic activity, like in this shrine of pagan god Pan, as we are. And that's why Jesus comes to save these boys and girls who got caught and hooked up on this worship. This is why Jesus had straight to Galilee, and he spends time with Galilee, and he is looking for these lost sheep of Israel. He is saving this, he's helping these struggling parents who don't know what to do with this. He's coming and casting these demons out, because this is how was the pattern that Jewish boys and girls in their teenage years, being attracted by this pagan stuff, got hooked up on this and got demon possessed. Because God knows, and God comes to save us from this Hell-oween, to hallow our souls with a great light. The people who walked in the darkness have seen the great light. Those who dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. For unto us the child is born, unto us the Son is given, and a government is upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So today, when we walk by our neighbors who are immersed in darkness, surrounding themselves with, spending tons of money, building the cemetery around their front yard, all kinds of other demonic things, thinking it's fun, it's cool. Let's pray for our neighbors, our loved ones. Pray for anybody whom we know needs this prayer, that the light of Jesus would shine upon their path to save them from Hell-oween. Because not did Jesus just cast out demons from different individuals, 5 stories in the gospel, but he went on the cross and defeated the Satan himself with his blood. And today we are to remember what he did for us. I know that for some people this Lord's Supper came unexpectedly, because there was a little communication confusion. But I've been praying and thinking, what should we do when these days are approaching? And I prayed, and somehow this thought come to my mind. In these days, we need Jesus. We need to remember what Jesus did for us on a cross. We need to remember his love and his death. And we are going to, after the prayer, we're going to break out into separate rooms to perform the ordinance of foot washing, remembering how Jesus loved us and commanded us to love one another. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are asking you today, especially in these days, to be the light. Be the light in our lives. Shine your light upon Minnesota and upon the entire country. Shine the light upon this world. We know that your blessed return is approaching. And there are so many people who are still walking in darkness. Shine your light, or Jesus. Shine, Jesus, shine. Amen.